fifth meeting?
Yes.
Yeah.
We're going to at this time call the fifth meeting of the House Standing Committee on Local Government to order. Please silence your cell phones as we get started. This time, Madam Secretary, please call the roll.
Representative Bentley, Representative Bray,
Present in the room.
Representative Brown, Representative Dixon,
Present in the room.
Representative Donahue,
Yes, ma'am. Present.
Representative Fleming,
Present in the room.
Representative Frazier Gordon,
Present in the room.
Representative Huff,
Present in my annex office.
Representative Imes,
Here in the room.
Representative Johnson,
Here in the room.
Representative Koenig,
Here in the room.
Representative Lockett,
Here in the room.
Representative Marzian, Representative Miller, Representative Reed,
Here in the room.
Representative Roberts,
Here in the room.
Representative Thomas,
Here in the room.
Representative Meredith.
Yes, ma'am, present. We do have several guests today. I want to welcome our friends from the Jailers Association who are here, on top of our other folks that we normally have from KCO, KLC, the Firefighters Association, FOP, and other groups. But I do have one really special guest that I want to recognize who's here today, a former member of this committee, former member of this body, our good friend, former Representative John Sims from Fleming County is here. We want to just welcome him back to the committee today. This time I would ask my vice chair if she would come and take the chair.
We will be hearing House Bill 476 first. Representative, if you'd like to introduce yourself and your guests, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Madam Chair, members of the committee, Representative Michael Meredith of the 19th House District, and I will let my guests introduce themselves.
J.D. Cheney, Executive Director, CEO of the Kentucky League of Cities.
Jim Henderson, Executive Director at the Kentucky Association of Counties.
Thank you, and the floor is yours.
Thank you, Madam Chair. House Bill 476 is a relatively simple piece of legislation. It is a companion bill to House Bill 475, which is a constitutional amendment relating to local taxation that will be heard tomorrow in Elections Constitutional Amendments Committee at 10 o'clock. What this bill does is very simple. It just keeps the status quo as it is. It makes sure that if the constitutional amendment were to pass, that counties, cities, municipal corporations, and other local governments, including consolidated local governments and urban county governments, can continue the same tax structures that they're authorized to have currently under the statutes. And it says that there is no extension of that without the General Assembly coming back to create a new framework for other types of taxes that would be authorized under the constitutional amendment. That's the explanation of the bill. There is a committee substitute that needs to be called, and it just added urban county governments and consolidated local governments to the cities, counties, and municipal corporations that were already present in House Bill 476.
With a motion and a second being heard, the committee sub is adopted.
Motion on House Bill 476 as amended by the committee sub.
All those in favor of the committee sub?
Aye.
Any opposed? It is adopted. Are there any questions? Confirming we do have a motion and a second. Are there any questions? Okay. Please call the roll.
Representative Bray,
Yes.
Representative Brown,
Yes.
Representative Dixon,
Yes.
Representative Donahue,
Yes, ma'am.
Representative Fleming,
Yes.
Representative Frazier Gordon,
Yes.
Representative Huff,
Yes.
Representative Imes,
Yes.
Representative Johnson,
Yes.
Representative Koenig, Representative Lockett,
Yes.
Representative Marzian, Representative Miller,
Yes.
Representative Reed,
Yes.
Representative Roberts,
Yes.
Representative Thomas,
Aye.
Representative Meredith.
Yes.
House Bill 476, as amended by House Committee Sub 1, passes with favorable expression. Same should on the House floor. Next up for discussion only, we have House Bill 211. And
Okay.
if you'd like to bring those guests to the table, if you have any.
Again, Madam Chair, Representative Michael Meredith of the 19th House District. We do have several guests from the Jailers Association with us, and I will let them introduce themselves for the record.
Chair, James Daly. Yep, James Daly. I'm the jailer at Campbell County, Kentucky, and currently serving as the president of the Kentucky Jailers Association.
Jamie Mosley, I'm Laurel County Jailer.
Josh Lindblom, Hardin County Jailer.
Thank you. Welcome, gentlemen. You may proceed.
Madam Chair, House Bill 211 is a bill that I brought forth this time to try to get some information from the Department of Corrections and to try to get some information from the Administrative Office of the Courts on an issue that I think is a pressing issue dealing with fairness of how we handle our correction system in the state. We had requested several months ago information on this from the Department of Corrections and still have not gotten a response on that. LRC has produced an in-house document that would be a fiscal note on this bill using data from the Administrative Office of the Courts. But what the bill does is pretty simple. If you have someone who is arrested on a felony charge, indicted, and held in a county jail, once that person is subsequently convicted, we all know that post-conviction, they are the responsibility of the state. Pre-conviction, they are the responsibility of the county where they were arrested. However, on the backside of that conviction, these inmates are being given a sentence credit for their stateside sentence for however many days they had sat in that county jail, and the counties have paid for that portion. So what is actually happening is the credit is a benefit to the state. The counties are paying it, but the state is providing no reimbursement for the benefit that counties are providing to the state with regard to those dollars that are being expended by county governments. This bill would address that issue and create a reimbursement. Now, we had all hoped for and expected a much lower fiscal note on the bill. As of right now, the projection is that it would be $79.2 million annually to implement this legislation. There are some ideas being floated around about a way to try to bring that fiscal dollar amount down to where we were hoping it to be prior to the initial fiscal note coming out. But again, we're still struggling because the Department of Corrections has not produced us anything from their shop to help with this number as well, even though it has been requested on multiple times. I will turn it over at this time to Jim to talk a little bit more about the bill.
Thank you, Mr. Meredith, or Chairman Meredith. I appreciate you having this on your agenda today, and I feel like this is an extremely important piece of legislation. The bill, while short in length, has incredibly important impact on our local fiscal courts and county governments. Currently, an offender waiting trial is housed in our jails, and some of them are there for years, not months or weeks, but some of them are there for years, and we absorb all of that cost in our county budgets. By Kentucky law, when that offender is found guilty, he gets credit by law for all of that time he has spent in our jail. So the state is deriving that entire benefit because he's going to serve whatever time. If he gets 10 years and he's been in my jail, or she's been in my jail 2 years, then he or she gets credit for that entire time, and the Department of Corrections reaps that benefit. Much like Chairman Meredith, we're shocked to learn that cost seems extreme, but it's important enough to say again that that's $79 million. If you look at that by the number of counties, 120 counties, but the numbers of them that have full-time jails, that's a significant impact, not a great number for the state, but a significant impact on our local county governments. Lastly, again, I'd just say that with corrections, their budgets have exploded over the last several years, County jails have not reaped any benefit of a per diem increase for over 2 decades. And with that, I guess I would say we're happy to answer any questions.
And I would say we are hopeful for a per diem increase. Representative Reed, we appreciate your all's work on that in the House budget. And also would like to just clarify that these dollars won't just benefit counties where there's an open jail. They would benefit counties where there's a closed jail as well, and they're contracting with a jailer in another county to house those inmates, because that's a cost that those counties are outlaying even if they don't have a jail themselves. So this is beneficial to all of our 120 counties that incarcerate folks, and again is really a matter of fairness. If you look at it, the perfect example is if someone were to get a 5-year felony sentence and they'd sit in a county jail for a year, that now becomes a 4-year sentence on the state side, and so they've effectively gotten the benefit of that full year, and that happens more times than you would probably expect.
If there's no further testimony, we do have some questions. Representative Bray.
Sure. Has the Department of Corrections given you all any indication as to why they won't share their data with you?
We had staff request the data before session. Our staff, budget staff, they have not sent anything over. And then the staff from A&R and Budget Review, who produces these documents, have been asking for that data on this bill as well as other bills and have gotten no reply at this point in time, is my understanding.
I've kind of noticed a recurring theme there, but just a quick comment on this. This is a huge, huge issue all across the state. All 3 of my counties are being strangled by this. And, you know, Madison County, population 100,000, it's killed them. Rockcastle County, population 16,000, it's killed them. So thank you all for bringing this. At some point in time, we've got to figure out how we're going to compensate our counties going forward, because one of the recurring themes is we've had these people in jail for, you know, up to a year, and then they're released for time served. And it doesn't make any sense. So thank you all.
Representative Johnson.
Yeah, I think I'm echoing pretty much what's already been said. In fact, I asked to speak, and then 5 seconds later, the gentleman made my point, but I'm going to make it again anyway. This $79 million, if that is in fact an accurate number, then that is, again, $79 million that we're forcing as an unfunded mandate onto our local jail system. And it's not fair to them, and they're already constrained fiscally. They're trying to find employees. They can't pay them the way they need to. We've got to do something about this, and I want to thank you for bringing this bill. Thank you, Madam Chairman.
Representative Donahue.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Good afternoon. A couple questions, if I may. So you have an issue with folks that are incarcerated prior to conviction. So there's no plan set up whether there's any kind of reimbursement from the state for holding those folks in jail for a year or whatever the time may be. Prior
to the conviction, whether it be a felony or a misdemeanor charge, the county is responsible for all those costs.
Okay.
After conviction, if it is a felony, the state takes over that cost. If they stay in a county jail, they're paying the per diem, or they're sent on to the state prison system. If it's a misdemeanor charge and they're convicted on a misdemeanor charge, then those people continue to be the responsibility of the county.
Thank you. Madam Chair, may I ask another question?
Yes, sir.
So you talked about after a conviction, and there are some people that have stayed a year or even 2 years. Is that because there is no availability to move that person to a penitentiary?
Pre-conviction, no one would be in a penitentiary.
I understand. I'm talking about after a conviction.
After a conviction, they are the state's responsibility. But it depends on their classification whether they would stay in a county jail or whether they would go to the penitentiary.
Okay, and for that,
and some of it would be also, some even of the higher classified inmates may stay in a county facility for some period of time, waiting on a bed to open up in the penitentiary as well.
Madam Chair, may I ask
Yes.
follow up? And so there's no compensation from the state if that occurs?
Post-conviction, the state
understand that.
does take care of that. However, the credit portion is all we're addressing here. So if the county has paid for them pre-conviction and they get credited on their stateside sentence after conviction, then the state, we believe the state should reimburse, and that's what the bill does, for the time served that was credited against their state sentence.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you.
Representative Koenig.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And to the point of the first question, do we have a date as to when this information was first asked for from the administration?
I don't have an exact date. It was November, roughly.
Okay. That's close enough. Look, I'm not one to lob bombs usually, but either we're trying to make good policy here, for God's sake. We are just looking for simple information so we can make good decisions, which is what we're all elected to do. And I don't know if it's incompetence or petty politics that's keeping this information away from us, and neither one's acceptable. And I'm going to respectfully ask, as I'm sure others will, that we just get the information needed so that, because these county jailers and fiscal courts are bipartisan. Okay, this shouldn't be a partisan issue. This should be how are we best going to utilize our money and how much can we afford to send down to the counties, because since I was on fiscal court 16 years ago, I think we've had one bump here in Frankfort, and it wasn't a very sizable bump to help counties run their jails. And it's past time, and we're just trying to make good decisions. So I would encourage the administration to do what's right here and help us make those good decisions. Thank you, Madam Chair.
And Representative, I don't wish to point fingers at anybody. I know there have been some turnover in their administrative structure through the cabinet there as well since this process started, or just before this process started. And the reason you're not seeing a bill move forward with a vote today or sometime soon right now is we want to get the numbers right. We want to make good policy. We want to know what the fiscal impact of this is. And that was the reason that we filed this bill very early in the session, so that we could do all the preparation work to do that. And again, AOC has been relatively responsive to our request, and that's what the fiscal note that you'll see on this bill was produced from. But to my knowledge, in talking with budget review staff and others, this bill and others from the Department of Correction have still never had any of those numbers brought back to LRC for analysis.
Representative Bentley.
Thank you, Chair Lady. This is the second committee meeting I've had today where we're not getting any information from the cabinets. Something's got to be done. And even in budget, we can't get information. Can't get information on social workers, can't get information here or there. It is getting to be a big concern of mine. And I just want to say thank you, Representative Keating, for bringing that up. We need information to make wise and good policy. Thank you, Chair Lady.
Any other questions or any other members seeking comment? Thank you for bringing this issue forward. And next on the agenda is House Bill 439, and this, again, is only for discussion purposes.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
Well, Mr. Chair, we only need to change one seat for this bill.
Thank you, Madam Vice Chair. Representative Tipton, if you would introduce yourself for the record, and then you may proceed.
Representative James Tipton, House District 53. I believe my guests, I've got the same guests. I believe they've all been introduced for the record. It's good to be back before the Local Government Committee. Actually, my second year of service in the House, I served on the Local Government Committee, so I miss these discussions. Thank you for the opportunity to introduce you to House Bill 439 today. I filed that early last week. And since that time, I've had input, I've had discussion, and I hope this continued conversation with the local government committee today, we can have more input and discussion on what I believe is a very sensitive and important topic for our Commonwealth. Just to give you a background why I pursued this, I have a constituent of mine who actually had a son who died in the Franklin County Jail 3 years ago. There were from the reports. I'm not the expert on this, but from the reports, this individual was suffering from withdrawal type symptoms, did not get medical care. The family came to me and said, "What can we do to help possibly to prevent this from happening to some other family?" So I reached out to the Kentucky Jailers Association. I actually met with their board almost a year ago, and we initiated this conversation about how we could increase and improve training for deputy jailers across Kentucky. And we have House Bill 439 in front of you. Essentially, every deputy jailer would be required to have 80 hours of initial training during their first year of being hired onto the job. They would also be required to have 40 hours of continuing education every year. The legislation would set up a training council that would be housed in Richmond at the Department of Criminal Justice Training to oversee this. There are reporting requirements in the bill. There are suggested topics for discussion, but I think now the Kentucky Jailers Association agreed with me. They want this training, so I'll turn it over to President Daly now to offer your input on this.
Thank you, Representative Tipton. And I appreciate the interest of the board in this.
Jim, get your microphone there, please.
I think after 2 or 3 times I'd learn. Anyway, thank you, Representative Tipton, and thanks to the board and Chairman. I was tickled to death when I got this call because this has been a big issue for me for my entire existence as relates to jails. And I've been involved with them since 1997. I've been through both the Bureau of Training and the State Police Academy, and I think I realize how important training is, why jailers have come this far. I mean, we do a lot of it on our own, but we need a centralized and consistent training. So with that, if I may, I would turn it over to my colleague. He has worked for the Bureau of Training. He's been in jail business about as long, I guess. And let him speak.
Well, thank you. A little bit of my background prior to becoming jailer almost 12 years ago is I spent about 13 years with the Kentucky State Police as a dispatcher. And my final 2 years of deployment with the Commonwealth was as a certified law enforcement instructor for Kentucky's Department of Criminal Justice Training in Richmond. I think before we talk about where this bill can take us, it would be important to discuss how we relate to training today. You know, currently statewide, there are no standards or standardized training processes that we use in the Commonwealth. Most counties depend on their own training staff. They have an academy to appropriately train individuals with their facilities. Most commonly, this is a senior officer, which has been to a very short, compact train the trainer course that is presented by Kentucky's Department of Corrections. Being that current training is provided by each facility, along with the fact that there is no formal oversight body to consider proposed curriculum or a peer group to review the experience and knowledge level of instructors that they need to possess in order to specialize in particular areas of instruction that they may be providing, you might imagine many times this creates a lot of inconsistency in our training for jails across the state. Our goal, with the help of Representative Tipton and with the formation of the Kentucky Jail Training Council, is to standardize that training statewide and to further professionalize deputy jailers and jails by bringing consistency within the curriculum that we utilize for instruction of the men and women we entrust with the safety of our inmate population. House Bill 439 would simply establish the Kentucky Jail Training Council that would oversee the implementation and standardization of deputy jailer training throughout the state. The bill would further mandate that no less than 80 hours of approved curriculum be provided to each new deputy jailer and no fewer than 40 hours of continuing education to be completed each year thereafter. For many years, our state's been nationally recognized at the top of our industry for providing quality training for the men and women of law enforcement. The work of the Kentucky Department of Criminal Justice Training, Louisville and Lexington's Training Academy, along with the Kentucky State Police Academy, have without question made our Kentucky peace officers equipped with the knowledge to perform their duties as safely as possible while having the skills to preserve life of our citizens when that becomes necessary. There is a common denominator among each one of these agencies, and that is the oversight and approval of curriculum by the Kentucky Law Enforcement Council. Through House Bill 439 and the creation of the Kentucky Jail Training Council, we have the opportunity to see that same level of impact in our county jails across the Commonwealth that we've seen in our law enforcement community. Providing a safer work environment for our deputy jailers while making certain that each are proficient in the areas of instruction that minimize liability for our counties and maximize the opportunity to recognize and respond to life-threatening situations, which can be a daily occurrence in our county jails. Giving those incarcerated the best chance for not only survival, but the opportunity to take advantage of our many programs and reentry initiatives that can lead to a positive return to our communities. I hope that we've kind of summarized, and we certainly, the association, are in support of the creation of this body. And if you have any questions, I hope that we will be able to answer those for you.
Mr. Chair, if I could make just a couple of additional comments. We have received input on the legislation. Before we have a final vote, there will be a committee substitute to make some adjustments to the legislation. One issue that has been brought up is we have several counties in the state who have closed jails. They actually do not have jails. Their jailers, their deputy jailers, essentially their role is transport of prisoners to a jail facility back for court appearances. There is some discussion that maybe they may not need quite as many hours of training in that role as a deputy jailer who's actually in a facility, so we are looking at that. Obviously, we always look at cost. The first day that I filed this legislation, I requested a fiscal note and a local impact statement. I know that our county judges, the fiscal courts across the state, one area they have concern is what will the cost be, so we're waiting for that to come back. I will share that the fiscal note did come back this week. Mr. Chairman, like you, I had a little sticker shock on that. It came back that it would be no more than $800,000, and the explanation is they based that this council would have, that they used the budget for the Kentucky Law Enforcement Council. However, I do not feel that this council, training council, will be nearly as inclusive, as intensive, so I believe that figure would come down. At this point, we'd be happy to entertain any questions, Mr. Chairman.
Representative Johnson.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I was looking at the 40-hour requirement for the continuing education part of it. Is there some criteria that you used for the 40-hour number? And the reason I'm asking is over and above any fiscal concerns about that, I would be concerned about literally having jailers out of pocket for a week, given their already tight constraints for having enough jailers to work. So is there any concern about that issue, having the jailers out of pocket for so long each year?
There is already a requirement for some continuing education. This does increase that. It also allows that the hours that are already required could be used for the 40 hours. And President Daly, would you like to comment on that?
Yes, sir. We've talked at some length about that in the Jailers Association, and I think there are abilities and ways for us to be able to move training around the state. And again, I would tell you that like Jailer Mosley has his own academy, so we could hold an academy in that area. In Northern Kentucky, we hold academies for ourselves all the time, so we can hold training in those areas, and we can break it up in such a manner that it may not even be 40 hours at one given time. If we have to, we'll break it up in different levels. It's that important, I think, to us as jailers to have the training and to have the consistency that we will work with this council in any reasonable manner to make sure that we're able to provide that training.
Quick comment, Mr. Chairman. Thank you for that. Thank you for the input. And again, I'm sure this is something you've already thought about. I don't think I just had a glimpse of the brilliance there, but yeah, it is a little concerning that they would be out of pocket for a week. I'd like to get information from my jailers as well as to whether or not they're seeing any issues with that. And I hope you'll continue to look at that, make sure we don't impact negatively on the jails in an effort for a great benefit that we can see here. So fully support the training. Just want to make sure we're not inadvertently hurting our jailers in the process. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
And Jim, just as a matter of clarification, and I think you kind of brought this up, this could be an in-service type training moved around the state. It might not be an actual direct housing program like the law enforcement program is. But just to put it in perspective, you have the 26-week in-house program at DOCJT. You also have other training programs for other groups in the state, and I may be wrong when I say this, and Bruce can correct me, but even the volunteer fire departments and volunteer firefighters in Kentucky are required to get 120 hours initial certification, I think, unless that has changed recently, and 20 hours annually a year as an update to that. Is that correct, Bruce? You can just nod.
It's 150 hours. 150.
150 initially. So that there's a way to get that all done across the state and not, these are people who are not working for an actual salary or a wage. These are people volunteering their time who are getting that many hours in to be able to do their training as well.
If I could add, it doesn't necessarily mean, too, that they will be leaving the facility for that training. Much of our training is housed at those local facilities now. What this would basically do would create continuity among approving the curriculum that was used to develop those lesson plans and would bring consistency. It's obviously a very difficult time from a labor standpoint to hire people right now. We put a lot of effort and time into training those folks at our own facilities. We also, as Jim said, we can facilitate that training at regional areas or neighboring counties. Many of us have existing right now. But if we can create this consistency and a certification of this initial 80 hours training as well as the continued, you could have relocation issues if someone moved from an eastern Kentucky jail to more central Kentucky or western Kentucky area. They would be certified with that initial training, which would be a savings to our county from a time perspective as well as a cost, and they would be immediately able to go directly to work in those facilities. So it would almost create some lateral opportunities of folks that may be relocating as well. But it is certainly not, I think, the intent to bring people out of pocket. We do feel like that can be accomplished very local, on-site, or regional.
Vice Chair Fraser Gordon.
Thank you. Thank you. I do support the training. I think it's much needed, and I do have a comment or a question in regards to, as you develop curriculum, if there is any opportunity to add training for community resources for that person to be more familiar with that. Because if we're looking at reducing recidivism, that might be a good opportunity for the deputy jailer to be able to provide a person suggestions and things they could do as far as workforce training or anything like that, because I know in my area, it's been flat out said, when someone leaves, they don't know whether to turn right or left. They're just basically sent out the door. So I just wanted to offer that as a possible part of the curriculum.
Representative, I'm having a hard time getting used to this. Fraser Gordon, if you look at page 6 of the bill where it talks about starting on line 9, it said the council shall establish a universal core curriculum and approve training subjects to be provided to deputy jailers for basic training. Continue ed that may include but are not limited to. So the council would, these are just suggestions, high suggestions, but the council certainly would have the ability to add course subject in curriculum.
And if I may, that is a burgeoning issue for corrections not only in Kentucky but throughout the United States. So I would hope that we as a group are smart enough to include that, because we almost have to. It's just so important in today's environment.
Any other questions from members of the committee? Josh, you got anything you want to add? I don't want you to have to have driven up to and not get a chance to say something.
Well, no, it's all right. I just want to say thank y'all for having us here for both the bills, actually. And to answer your question about the reentry and everything, and of course, most jails across the state are already doing a reentry program. Of course, we actually have a reentry council in Hardin County that helps people, establish themselves when they get out and before they get out. So it's one thing that a lot of the jails have already stepped up and have done, and it's really helping out a lot of these areas with recidivism. And when you're able to get somebody an opportunity when they get out and stuff, they stay out. So that's been a big thing across the Jailers Association, all 118 jailers that we have here here in the Commonwealth. So, but I just appreciate y'all having us here, and it's wild to think, the Jailers Association as a whole feels appreciated right now and stuff, that you are looking to the benefits of it, stuff, trying to help us out. Some of this stuff's been neglected over the years and stuff, not for anybody's fault and stuff, but it's just one of those things that I appreciate y'all bringing everything up.
Mr. Chair, if I could just add one quick thing.
Go right ahead.
I neglected to mention the name of the young man. His name was Dylan Stratton. His mother is a constituent of mine in Anderson County, and Section 7 of the bill states that Section 1 through 5, this act may be cited as Dylan's Law. And I certainly wanted to add that in. It's always a tragedy. I know we've heard about the situation in Louisville. Representative Reed, I believe LaRue County maybe had an incident recently. So we want to try and prevent these situations from happening, and feel like that having better trained, more professional deputy jailers across the state will help us accomplish that. Thank you all for the opportunity to be here.
Thank you all very much for the presentation. Staff has asked if members of the committee would lick folders. We might see some of these bills again, and we wouldn't have to hopefully go back and print new documents for them. Representative Bentley, I think you probably need to record a vote, correct, sir? Duly noted. Seeing no other business before the committee, I've got a motion to adjourn. Do I have a second? All in favor say aye. Any opposed? We are adjourned.